This is a new phenomenon, but we are, in terms of, we are supposed to observe human rights, and we are committed to observation of human rights. So the intersex people are also human beings, and when they come, we make sure we observe their human rights. They are protected by the law just like anybody else. So when they come, once they declare, or we know, of course, once during registration, they'll be able to tell us. And we'll give them the best protection possible, because this is now a different group from the groups we are used to handling. So it's something we are working on. It's a new thing, but that's now, some of them have, remember the case in court where one went to court? So we are following that jurisprudence. It's guiding our operations, and as I've said, now we've trained most of our officers on human rights. So anybody who comes disabled, those who are differently able, there's no discrimination, because once the officers understand the human rights are universal, everybody must enjoy those rights. Anybody who comes, we don't discriminate. So those intersex people are also having the best protection possible from the prison service, because they are human beings just like the rest of us. First time, Justice Defenders has been training, and already 6,000 prisoners have benefited by prosecuting their cases and been released. 6,000 prisoners have been released because they have prosecuted their cases, and in the process, some of them have been released from remand. That helps us, because as I've said, once they know how to apply the law, they will help us decongest our prisons, because the main challenge we are facing is congestion. Our facilities are meant for a lesser number, but when more are in prisons, we prefer that if they can prosecute their cases faster, we'll be able to decongest our remand prisons. Yes, we're talking of bail. Sometimes the bail terms, can be very expensive for the poor. Most of the people behind bars are the indigent, the poor, and they cannot afford some of if the bail terms are very high, they will not afford. Because let's give an example. If somebody is accused of stealing a chicken, and he finds himself that is required to pay a fine of maybe 50,000, that person definitely will have a challenge paying that fine. So once he's able to know the law, he can even go and plead with the courts that the situation is, I can afford maybe a lesser fine, or a lesser bail terms, something like that. We are training 61 paralegals, among them 24 inmates. And this is done through support from Justice Defenders. Trainings they are conducting here are helping the offenders and our officers understand law in practice. Most of them have basic paralegal knowledge, but practicing how to prosecute their cases, how to file cases is another thing altogether. So the training here is giving them practical approach to how they do their cases in court, how they follow up on matters in court, their appeals, their appeals, and the process, the whole court process. Generally, petty offenders in the region of 10 to 10, because it fluctuates. So you can find petty offenders could be about 10 to 15,000. Those are petty offenders. But generally, the population sometimes oscillates between 50 and 60. And yet our capacities are about 25,000. So you see that we need to reduce that number, so that, as I've said, we can be able to train them thoroughly, so that when they leave, these people with skills, carpenters, masons, the veterinary doctors I've talked about, lawyers, they will not go back to crime. They will be now serving society, and that will be a positive contribution of prisons to national development.
We're here because we know that the majority of prisoners in the Kenyan system do not have a lawyer. The service that Justice Defenders does to provide paralegals to assist them is extraordinary, it is necessary, it is important, and that's why we're here. The fact that people don't understand their rights. So many people get hurt, so many people end up in jail, so many people lose their houses, so many people end up with problems because they don't understand their basic legal rights. So what Justice Defenders does is explains basic legal rights, analyzes the cases of the clients that are brought to them.
This year we served about 20,000 clients. Out of those, 6,000 of them were released from prison on from different levels. There are those who are released on bail and bond. There are those who their convictions were quashed. There are those who were acquitted of their different offenses. Currently in 18 prisons in Kenya, running from Naivasha all the way to Nyeri and others in Nairobi and Murang'a. The aim, the objectives of this program is to make sure that those who are in prison, because we know that in the Kenyan prisons, those who are in prisons cannot afford an advocate and they do not have access to an advocate. So for us is to bring the legal knowledge, the legal skills to them, closer to them, because we say justice cannot be served if one side cannot tell their story. Almost 90% of those in prisons do not have advocates representing them. So they go to court alone, which is a real challenge, because if somebody from the rural area is arrested and the proceedings are in English, they were given a charge sheet that they do not understand what it is, then they are not able to present their case to court. So they are not able to tell their story, which means that justice will not be served because the court only gets to hear one side of the story. The lack of legal representation has played a part in the numbers within the prisons, especially when you look at our prisons. Almost half the populations are remandees. These are people undergoing their trials. So you find some, they did not even apply for bail, or when they applied for bail, they were given high bails. They do not know the process of reapplying for a bail to be reduced. Others could be out of prison, but because they don't know the process, they are not able to advocate for themselves to do their cases out of court. So if people had access to legal services, I believe the numbers in prison will be quite low.
I did my law degree and actually finished my law degree, and I got a second-class honors. In the community, we usually help prisoners to draft their appeals. We also help prisoners to know about their rights. And actually what we usually do most, this year alone, I've assisted more than 10 prisoners. And we usually even get the judgments, and they have the judgments right. Even if you want them, we can bring them. We draft complete amended grounds of appeal, send them to court and argue, because most prisoners don't know how to argue in court. So what we do, we make sure that we make everything for the judge to understand, and we leave them alone. We tell them they should not go and talk to court because they don't know what they are supposed to do.